And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. You can see don't even have lights on in the studio yet. Don't even have my earbuds in yet. Now we do. Now I can hear myself. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's what it is. All right. All right. Let's flip over some lights in this place, huh? Let's turn them all on. On immediate, all outlets, and there we go. Good. See? Are they all working? I think that, what in the heck did I push? I hit something. Need to stop that. No. That needs to go away. Oh boy. Let's see if we can get rid of an overlay. It needs to come over to this side, doesn't it? Ba 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 da 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 da. That is not even supposed to be there. That is not even supposed to be there. Oh, I like the scale on that though. I like that it's huge. Ba 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 da 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 da. Da 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 da. All right, let's get rid of that nonsense. Where'd that come from? Yeah, that was. I'm glad you enjoyed that. That's not. See, it's got. That won't work. It's got right in front of my head. It certainly does. It's a little bit different. And camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, camera 4, and that is overlaid on top of my camera. I don't like that because that's what it looks like on that side. So we got to clean up that side. Okay, let's clean up this one. Oh, what's going on, people? Pretty awesome. Let's see. Did something get stuck on disc 1? It certainly did. That's why you have a pre-show right there. Let's do a camera check, as a matter of fact. There's camera 1. And, of course, there is motion outside. Camera 2, camera 3, camera 4. It's all working. How about the overlay? Oh, that one's not working. Don't do that one. That one's not working. Is camera 2 really working? The V2 is not. Did I hit a button? I think I did. So don't do a V2. We usually don't do a V2 anyway. Needs to be cooler in here. Bird feeder's busy today. It's loud today is what it is. Oh, look at that. It's kind of nice today. Let's make it cooler in here. There we go. Yeah, it's nice outside. What is it, 60? That says 68. It's probably gotten a little warmer in the last hour, though. What else we got going on? Are we doing a live stream? How does this work? Are we recording? We are. We're recording. And I don't know what's going on with my V1 there. That's too bad. Right there. Can't use that. but we can use this one. Gosh, this one snuck up on me. Now I need to, what else do we need to do? Do we have everything right there? I think we do. That stays there. Socrative needs to start up. Let's go to the Socrative login and get the quiz going, because there is a quiz. There's always a quiz. Next, teacher paste. I don't want your name, and go. There we go. Now you should see. Now you folks are already there. You're already in it to win it. I think it's time to start the show. I think we should get this thing going. There's a question I don't get often. What is the brand of my eyeglass frame? This is a Warby Parker Crane. Warby Parker Crane. I'm glad I could answer a question already. Time for a study group, everybody. Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 2017 Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group. This is my monthly study group for Security Plus, where I ask you questions about what's on the Security Plus exam, and then you get to answer live and online. We all get to answer together and see how we do, and then I'll go through the answers. We'll see just how much we really know about Security Plus. In this first hour, I'll spend time with that Q&A and talk to you. In the second hour, we have more of an after show where I open up the phone lines and I'll answer questions about anything. It doesn't have to be about Security Plus. It can be, just about darn near anything. This is something that I'm able to do thanks to your support. I would not be able to have this study group without having you visit the website, watch the videos, and of course, every single one of my Security Plus videos is available to watch absolutely free, every minute of every video. Some people like an offline version. This is the offline version, the flash drive. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/getsecplus, GETSECPLUS. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter and on YouTube and on Facebook and on Instagram. You just type in professormesser.com/ the thing you want to go to, /Twitter, /Facebook, /YouTube, /Instagram, / a thing, and you will get there. Also, don't forget about the voucher discount. Don't pay full price for your vouchers. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers and get a discount off any of the CompTIA vouchers, Security Plus, or any of them. So something to keep in mind if you're working through and ready to take your exam. That offline version of my course is not just the videos. It also includes audio. It also includes my course notes, which we'll talk about in a bit. I kind of bundle everything together for you. It's a one-stop shop. So everything is in that one package. You don't have to buy separate pieces of those to have that going. There is a lot that we're going to do today. I have a lot of questions for you. So make sure that you get online to answer the questions. And the way you do that is to use this fantastic service that we use called Socrative. So make sure that you absolutely go through the Socrative.com, click the student login, and go to the room named Professor Messer. You have to type that in, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you do that. That way you will be in the correct room. And if you are in the correct room, you'll see a question that is there already. If I can bring it up on my screen, I can actually show it to you. The question is, where'd you get that thing? So you should be able to answer that question. It's just a sample question. Just wanted to kick things off because I'd like to know where you got that thing. And then as you type all of these things in, as you answer, you will be able to find out more about where did you get that thing. And if you are in the right Socrative room and you type Professor Messer in properly, you will see that question on your screen. And what's nice is you can sit right there and all the questions will just change automatically. You don't have to go to a different page. You don't have to change anything on your screen. There's also an app on the app stores of your favorite kind of mobile device. You can find the Socrative student app, and they will be able to have it on your mobile device too. It's kind of nice to have that available. Now, if you're watching this on a replay, unfortunately, Socrative is not going to be available for you. It's something that's only available on the live stream. So we'd love to have you join us. Make sure you visit professormesser.com/calendar, and you can find out when the next event is, and you can follow along with us. So the options on where did you get this thing is this old thing, or it was behind the couch, or I don't know what you're talking about, or you gave it to me, or look, a squirrel. So at least 38% of you said, look, a squirrel. Just let's avoid the question completely. Not a bad idea. The Security Plus exam is one that was released in April 2014. Usually CompTIA updates these about every 3 years. So we would probably see an update coming at about the same time frame, April 2017. So it should be coming up the next few months. Now keep in mind that when CompTIA releases a new version of the exam, you're able to take both exams. There's an overlap period, usually about 6 months long. So I really expect that we'll be able to take this version of the exam up until the end of 2017. That's generally what CompTIA will do. I have no reason to think that that's not something that will happen this time. It will certainly, that overlap period gives you a chance that if you've been studying for this one, they just don't cut you off. They don't say, nope, you got to jump to the new one. They give you some overlap period. And whether you take the existing version of the exam or whether you take a newer version of the exam, should it appear, it doesn't matter. You get exactly the same certification. So it doesn't matter which version of the exam you take, same piece of paper when you complete the exam, when you pass it. You're going to get 90 minutes and a maximum of 90 questions. You might not get 90 questions. You might get fewer than 90, but you're not going to get more than 90. So you have to make sure you spend the right amount of time on this exam. The time maintenance, the time management on these exams is pretty important. You need a passing score of 750 between a scale of 100 and 900. Yeah, I don't understand either. And that's intentional. CompTIA doesn't want you to know how these things are scored. We know that the questions themselves, the different questions are worth a different amount of points. So you can't even really think about a certain number of questions to get correct because it's not a percentage. So everything is a little bit different. I think they do that intentionally so that you just have to do your best. If you go in with the idea that you're going to ace this, you know all the material, it doesn't matter what they ask, it doesn't matter how many questions, you're going to pass it, you're going to be just fine. It's one of those interesting quirks of the exam. Also, want to let you know on my website, this is relatively new in the past few months, I've taken all of the questions from our previous study groups and I've put them online into these 20 question exam chunks. So that's something that you can go to professormesser.com/popquiz and you can take some sample test questions right now. And these come from my study groups. These are not actual test questions. These are questions that I write. But I think my questions tend to get you thinking about how to apply some of these concepts. I'm not just asking you for definition. I want you to absolutely go through this and understand every little piece of this to be able to know how to use all of the capabilities, know all of the things that are in the CompTIA exam objectives. We'll talk about those exam objectives later on in this study group. I've got quite a bit going on here as well with these questions. I wrote them last week. I don't even remember what the questions were. So we're going to do one right now. The first thing that I have for you is a performance-based question. I'm trying to do more of these in my study groups. I want you to think about this question. How would this work? I need you to restrict access to the wireless network unless the user knows the wireless password of let me in. I also want to name the access point with a particular name called doorway, but I don't want any of my wireless devices to be able to see that particular name that I'm associating with this network. So how would I do that? I have a user interface here, and this is something that you might be prompted with on the exam. So here's a blank screen, and now it's a default configuration, and now you have to configure it. I want you to restrict access. Obviously, you won't be able to plug this in to Socrative. You're welcome to put an answer in here. I see your answers as they come up. So you're welcome to put anything in the blank, but I'm going to show you in the answer what you would change on this screen so that these particular pieces are all correct. So maybe you've configured a wireless access point before. Maybe you haven't. It's an important part of the exam. It's a big section of, not a big section, but a section of the exam objectives is to be familiar with these wireless access points. So maybe you know how to work through these wireless access point questions. So what would you click on the screen, or what would you type into this screen to restrict access to the wireless network unless a user knows the password? Where would you put this password on the screen? You want to name the access point doorway. How would you do that? And then you want to hide the name from all of the wireless devices. So there's really about 4 different things I have to configure on this screen. I think some of you, you're typing in the answers here to me. I think you're doing a pretty good job. I think some of you have done this. Some of you are like, okay, I know one of those. I know how to do one of those pieces of it, and this is what I would click to do that. So how would I, a lot of you spot on. You must have worked on these before, these access points, and working through them. Some of you are pretty good with knowing what to put in. And some of you are saying, I have no idea. And that's fine too. This is your opportunity in this study group to get every question wrong. And hopefully, as you're getting the questions wrong, you're learning something about how to configure all of these pieces. So let's see what I answered on this one. If you're listening, there's an audio version of this that I'm creating. So if you're listening on the audio version, it may be difficult to actually see this on your screen, but I'll try to describe what I did. So here's the answer. I'm going to show this screen. Bing. So here's the screen. So what I did is I made sure that enable SSID broadcast was unchecked. That's the second part of this. Maybe I should go through the list in order. So let's start at the beginning. Restrict access to the wireless network unless a user knows the password of let me in. So what we need to configure is some security options. The strongest security option, the one you should be using for by default for everything, is the WPA2. In this case, it's a pre-shared key, and I'm only using AES as the encryption authentication mechanism on here. AES is the proper setting. There are older versions like TKIP that would allow you to do that, although we found there are some vulnerabilities associated with TKIP. So we want to be sure to use the strongest functions for encryption on our network, and that would be WPA2 and AES. The PSK, if you ever see that written, means pre-shared key. That means everybody's using a pre-shared key. This particular access point doesn't allow you a WPA2 enterprise or 802.1x configuration. If I had an access point that was really designed for a company, it's an access point that would be able to integrate with an existing database of names and passwords, and you'd simply use your normal username and password to connect to this, and everybody would have all of the different usernames and passwords that they would use to access the network. Nobody uses, obviously, a pre-shared key in something like an office environment, or very rarely. So that's the first thing we want to do, is set WPA2 with the pre-shared key of AES, and we want to assign the passphrase of let me in. Pretty straightforward. Very nice to have that there. We also, next step in here is we want to name the access point doorway. So you can see there's a name, SSID, the service set identifier in the wireless network. That is the wireless network name, and it's doorway. Now, normally you'd go to your mobile device or your computer and you'd click to get a list of all of the available networks, and doorway would be listed in all of those available networks. But in this question, I specifically said we would like to hide that name. That doesn't mean that you can't connect to the network, but what it means is it's not going to populate into those lists of wireless networks that you would see. And the way that you do that is you disable the SSID broadcast functionality. So there was a check mark. If I go back one slide, the default is to broadcast the name of the network. I think most people would like to be able to do that. But in this case, I unchecked the enable SSID broadcast, which effectively disables the SSID broadcast. And that way we know it's not going to automatically populate. So if you were able to put in the WPA2 PSK, you added the passphrase, you added the name of doorway, and you disabled that SSID broadcast, then you got this one absolutely correct. Now, on this particular access point in the chat room, somebody's asking about wireless isolation. You'll notice there is an option for enable wireless isolation. It's a pretty normal configuration for access points. If I was to check that, that means that devices on the wireless network would not be able to communicate with each other. There may be environments where you would like that. Maybe this is a public access point. It's in an area where there's normally guests on the network. It's not used for a production network. People don't have to communicate between each other on this network. And if that's the type of network it is, I might want to enable wireless isolation so that none of the wireless devices could ever communicate with each other. Kind of nice to have that capability in some cases. I think in most environments that are businesses, you probably do want to be able to communicate with each other. There's a lot of applications that perform peer-to-peer functionality, instant messaging, communication functionality, and that's one that might be useful to have available. And you might have a laptop and a mobile device, and you might want those to communicate between each other, between all of the devices that you have. So it's not something that you would normally enable on a home network because you'd want all of your devices to communicate with each other. So that is a very good example of a type of performance-based question that you may be faced with when you first sit down on the exam. One of the things I generally recommend is that you skip over all the performance-based questions. They're usually presented right at the beginning. There might be 1 or 2 or 3 or 6. I just don't know how many there's going to be. There's going to be quite a few there to be able to work through, but I recommend you skip them. There's a lot to these performance-based questions. You're just sitting down for the exam. The stress level is high. The adrenaline is flowing. You're barely able to read the questions and understand them. Or maybe that's just me. I'm a bad test taker. So in that particular case, I can skip over them because these CompTIA exams are not linear exams. They don't force you into a certain number. In the CompTIA exams, you can jump around to any question you would like at any time. So I generally recommend you skip the performance-based, you go straight to the multiple choice. And I think as you get through the multiple choice, you can settle down, you get rid of the adrenaline, and you start remembering things that you forgot as you're going through the multiple choice questions. By the time you circle back to the performance-based questions, there are things now that you can remember and apply to those more, I wouldn't say more complex, but certainly a different way of answering a question. It's not a multiple choice question. It's a fill in the blank. It's a configuration of an access point, a command line, although in the Security Plus, you shouldn't expect to see any command line options. On other exams, you might, but it's one of those where maybe you can just skip those, and when you come back, you're in a better place to answer them. So that's my recommendation, one of my tips for taking the exam. Let's do another question. Let's do a multiple choice. Let's say we're done with the performance-based questions. Let's go straight to a multiple choice. Here's the first multiple choice of the day, first multiple choice of the year for Security Plus study group. Which of these would be the best storage location for web server certificates? Which would be the best storage location for web server certificates? Now, if you think you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. You want to answer on Socrative. Go to Socrative.com, click the student login, and go to room name Professor Messer. And if you do that, you'll see these answers will be here. Is it a TPM? Is it a public file share? Is it an encrypted USB? Is it an HSM? Or is it a BIOS? One of those is going to be the best storage location for web server certificates. This is going to be a common theme, by the way, in these questions that I ask of you, is that I'm going to ask you for the best answer given the particular question that I'm asking. Now, this means that some of these answers, some multiple answers, might actually be somewhat correct, but not all the answers are going to be the best answer. There should be one single answer that jumps right out at you that says, okay, this is absolutely the best one you should be using. So make sure you read the questions very carefully. Make sure you step through all of the possibilities that are there, and make sure you understand exactly what it's asking for when it puts these. This is a very specific one that I'm asking for. So make sure you read through these questions. It becomes pretty important when you get to answer them. So let's see how we did with these. Which of these would be the best location for web server certificates? We can see that. Well, let's go number one. The first number one is HSM, 41% of you. Not a majority, but certainly the highest number that we have answering. Only 10 points behind is TPM, 31%. And we have 14% said public file share, 9% said encrypted USB, and only 2% said the BIOS. So one of these is really going to be the best place to have a web server certificate. Where's that going to be? Now, if you've never managed an enterprise network with a lot of web servers, every web server has a different set of certificates. These private keys that are on these devices are pretty important. If someone got their hands on the web server certificate that has that private key in it, that would be a bad thing. So keeping all of these secure becomes very, very important. And one way to do this, the one very common way to do this, is with the hardware security module, HSM. This is a device. It's like a server. It's like a machine. And this device effectively handles all of these certificates. It gives you a central place to manage all of these devices. You can back up all of your keys, and it's all centralized on these devices. And this HSM is now very secure. This also, many HSMs have the ability to accelerate the cryptographic functions. So instead of having your web server be the endpoint and handling all the SSL encryption and decryption, this can very often be a front end that handles it. And because it's doing this in hardware, it's very fast. I guess fast relative to something that's running in software that might be on a web server. Encryption itself and decryption, there's a lot of overhead. It never has the speed that all of the other network devices would have. You have to put a lot of hardware behind it if you want to have that speed increase. You often see this in very large environments. You can cluster these together because people in the chat room appropriately asking, but what if the HSM goes down? What if the power supply in this device goes out? What happens now? The answer is you have multiples of these. You might even have clusters of these working together. They're all synchronized. There's redundant power in these devices. Just like there's redundancy with your other servers, there's redundancy with these as well. Of course, you would want to have redundancy with all of those. So if we look at our answers, HSM, the 47% of you that answered HSM did get this one absolutely correct. Now, 29% of you said TPM, a trusted platform module is what that stands for. And a TPM, very important piece of our workstations. Many of our workstations have a TPM built into the motherboard. Sometimes you'll find it as an option. You can add a module onto a motherboard. These days you see a lot of TPMs that are built in, especially on devices, on computers that are designed for enterprise. The TPM is just it's even part of the CPU now these days to have that capability there. That provides a storage of keys on a single device. Very common to integrate something like BitLocker, which is a full disk encryption. We integrate onto a single device by storing these cryptographic certificates in the TPM of that device. It's very secure. People can't get to it. It's a very good way to have that there. There is also other options. Public file share is a bad place to put your web server certificates. Never put your web server certificates on the public file share. Don't put them on an encrypted USB. These USB keys will go bad. You'll lose them. That's a bad place. In fact, you don't want to lose the USB and have somebody pick it up and now they have access to your web server certificates. And the BIOS, that's not where you put any type of certificate, web server or otherwise. So it would not be the BIOS. The answer indeed is D, HSM, our hardware security module. Let's do another question. I think we're off to a good start. My goal is to get about 50% of you answering these right. I got 48% on that one. I feel like I was successful. And the ones that didn't get it right, that's okay. Now we have learned all about the hardware security module, and we now, if we're asked that on the exam, we'll be able to get that right. So let's go to the next question. And the question is, which of these would be an advantage of Kerberos over Radius? One of these is going to be advantage of Kerberos over Radius. We got a question, I think it was on the Network Plus study group last week, where somebody really wanted to know more detail about LDAP and Radius and TACAX Plus and Kerberos and how all these things work together. And I gave a very disjointed yet hopefully comprehensive answer during the after show. This is one where you're going to get this a lot for security. You're going to need to know how to implement these technologies in an environment where you've got security like this. So make sure you know what an advantage would be of Kerberos over Radius. It's got to be one of these, isn't it? An advantage of Kerberos over Radius. Let's see how we did with this. Let's look at the answers and the folks that are answering Kerberos and Radius and what all these might be. 64% said you authenticate once and gain access to multiple services. 18% said it's used across multiple operating systems and platforms. 9% said it can be integrated to centralized name services, and 7% said you can authenticate from mobile devices. Now, this is an example, by the way, of a question that every single one of these answers describes Kerberos. You can integrate to centralized name servers. You can authenticate to mobile devices. You can use it across multiple operating system and platforms. You can authenticate once to gain access to multiple services. But this is one where you really need to understand the differences between these technologies. And this is a really, really good example of understanding the differences between them, because you want to be sure that you know what these differences are when you're sitting down for the exam. And one of the differences, obviously, when you're dealing with something like Radius, you can authenticate with Radius to centralized name servers. You can authenticate with Radius from mobile devices. You can use Radius with multiple operating systems and platforms, but Radius doesn't provide you with the single sign-on functionality that Kerberos does. Kerberos gives you effectively a ticket once you authenticate and says you are absolutely who you say you are. Here's a ticket that will gain you access. It's like getting a stamp or getting a wristband when you go to a theme park. And now that you're in, everybody who sees that you have the stamp or that you have the wristband, you now have access to everything that might be inside, or at least the things that are appropriate for you to have access to. It's one of the benefits of Kerberos. So if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to figure out more about Kerberos, that's a really good example of running into those things. Kerberos itself, it's an odd name, isn't it? To have something called Kerberos. It's named after the dog, the three-headed dog of the underworld. Something when you're dealing with a lot of technology, we run out of things. So after a while, we just name it on things that were in mythology. Here's a good example of that. And of course, there are multiple devices and multiple services that allow Kerberos to work. You may see these referred to as the key distribution center. This is the device that's authenticating you and saying, oh, well, you now get a key because you gave me the correct username and password. Here's your key. Here's your access. Here's your ticket to the rest of the network. There's an authentication service. It's a separate service, but it can certainly be integrated with the key distribution center, or it can be a separate device. It's one of the benefits of these types of platforms. These technologies can all be distributed through your environment. Makes it very useful to have that. And there's also a ticket granting service, TGS. So if you're ever in a place where you're trying to figure out all of these different Kerberos functions, you'll see these names pop up. These are very specific to Kerberos. You'll never see them used with other types of authentication systems. There's something that's very unique to this platform. So it's one of those things to think about. There is obviously a lot on the exam. There are questions about authentication. There's questions about cloud computing and network diagrams and risk management and encryption and security tools and much, 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 much more. So one of the things that I recommend that people do is I recommend that you go through all of my videos and you take your notes. Take your own notes as you're going through the videos. Now, obviously, for Security Plus, there's a lot of videos to go through. There are many, many videos to go through. So one of the challenges is you may not be able to get through all of them. So one of the things that I did, I've already gone through these videos for you. I went through every single video and I copied down every important piece of information. I got all the pictures that I've got from these videos. I've got the graphics that I've created. I've got the tables that I've created. And this is a 36-page set of course notes. This is what they are right here on my screen. So I tried to get everything. In fact, I really just took every bit of text that I feel like I've summarized pretty well, along with all the graphics, along with all the tables, along with all the port numbers that you need to know. They're all in here. So this is something that hopefully you might find value with as well. So I highly recommend you give these a look if you're trying to get those last set of notes. This obviously doesn't replace a book. It doesn't replace a set of videos. It doesn't replace any of the other study tools you're using, but it is a nice consolidated list of notes. It's a PDF. It's available electronically immediately when you purchase this. You can put it on all of your mobile devices. It's your personal license. So as long as you're the only one using it, you can put it on your desktop, on your laptop, on your mobile device, on your mobile phone, on your tablets, everywhere that you need this information so that you can study and be ready for this exam. It's one of those nice things. Some people even print it out. This is, I don't put any restrictions on this PDF. I want you to be able to use this in the way that you would like. So feel free to have a look. If you're interested in learning more about my course notes, you can go to professormesser.com/securitycn. SecurityCN for course notes. And that will show you a big page with all the different things that I have in these course notes and give you a feel for that. There is a lot in these course notes. And another nice part of this is that everything that you spend on these course notes goes right back into keeping this website going. Would not be able to do any of this without your support. So I want to thank the folks in the chat room, the folks that are watching and listening for supporting me by purchasing the course notes and watching the videos. Really do appreciate it. So this is find out more at professormesser.com/securitycn. Let's do another question. Here's the question I have for you. Which of these best describe a web of trust relationship? This is a web of trust relationship. I took advantage, or I used a web of trust relationship just this week. Which of these would best describe a web of trust relationship? Is it a single CA issues certificates to intermediate CAs? Is it that relationships are based on trust between many others? Is it that certificates must be validated by a third party? Or is it that everyone receives their certificates from one authority? One of these best describes a web of trust relationship. And if you think you know the answer, don't answer in the chat room. You want to instead go to Socrative.com to the room named Professor Messer, and you need to answer what a web of trust relationship is. This is one of those in that last section of the Security Plus exam that deals with encryption technologies and securities. Obviously, trust is a big part of encryption. It's a fundamental part of encryption. If you don't understand or trust the other person that you're communicating with, it becomes very difficult to trust the decrypted data that you're receiving. So how do you build that trust? Well, there's lots of ways to build trust in these encryption technologies, because often you're encrypting and decrypting from someone you've never met before. You've never seen anything about that. You've never worked with any of those. It's one that comes very handy to know how that trust works. And there's so many different ways. There's not just one way to set up trust when you're dealing with encryption. There's many different ways to set up these trust relationships. Web of trust is a very specific kind of trust relationship. So let's see how we answered on the web of trust. 53% of you said that relationships are based on trust between many others. And we've almost got kind of a tie for second, a three-way tie. 19% said certificates must be validated by a third party. 17% said everyone receives their certificates from one authority. And then 11%, maybe that would be a third, would be a single CA issues certificates to intermediate CAs. Let's talk about trust relationships then. There's many different kinds. The ones you need to know for the exam is the single CA, that's a certificate authority, the single certificate authority. There are hierarchical trust relationships. This is where you might have a single primary certificate authority, and then that certificate authority might issue intermediate certificate authorities to the other folks in the organization that are managing these certificates. Very useful to have that there. One of those that, whenever I start looking through all of the different pieces of what you need to know, there's a lot of different kinds. Mesh is another good example, and being able to work through those. This is one where every certificate authority cross-certifies every other certificate authority, which is great if you have 3 certificate authorities. But what if you have 100? Now you have all 100, and then you add another one, and all of those 100 now have to cross-certify. That's just not scalable at all to be able to work with those. The one that we were talking about, though, is a web of trust. This is a very common trust relationship that is used in PGP or GPG if you're doing this with open source. This is one where you really don't meet these people that you're sending emails to over the internet, but maybe you know someone who knows that person. That's the web of trust. Very common, in fact, to when PGP was first out, we would have PGP key signing parties where everybody would get together. You get to meet people, you know who they are, you know where they work, and you could trust that you're meeting that person. So then you can sign each other's keys. So now if somebody sends you a note that is encrypted with PGP or with the GPG, then you can trust the key that was in that encryption is absolutely that person because you've already met them. And now if they sign someone else's, you can trust the friend of that person, because it's sort of like now you've got this, I trust someone else that you know, a friend of a friend of a friend. That is a web of trust. is the friend of a friend of a friend. So make sure you have a look at those. There's a lot of that you can do in that web of trust to have that there. I think that becomes very handy to have. I used PGP this week. So I had somebody who's watched my Security Plus study groups before. And one of the things I often tell people is if you'd like to play around with encryption, send me a PGP or a GPG. It's the same encryption technology. Send me a GPG encrypted email. The email is on my website. You can send it to james@professormesser.com, or you can click the contact us on my website, put it into the blank that's there. My key is in a public key server. You should be able to find my public key and encrypt the email to me and send it and see if I can decrypt it and then see if I can re-encrypt it with your key. Hopefully you've got it on a public key server. You're sending me the key directly, and I'll send you a note back in an encrypted form to see if you can decrypt it. It's a nice process to go through. It's one of those that becomes kind of fun to play around with the encryption and the digital signatures and working with the keys and having a key ring and being able to put all of this together. It becomes very useful to have that there. So that might be one that you might want to consider as well. So if we look at the answers and exactly what we have here, well, we can see that 54% did say relationships are based on trust between many others. The answer B is the correct answer. Single CA issuing certificates to intermediate CAs is more of that hierarchical certificate authority model. Certificates must be validated by a third party. That's the certificate authority model we use for our web servers. We usually are purchasing a certificate from a third party that's validating that we are who we say we are, and we can know that everybody else knows that as well. And everyone receives their certificates from one authority. That might be a single certificate authority that you might have in your environment. Maybe in your organization, there's a single CA. All certificates come from that single CA. Most people usually do a hierarchical though. Most people will create intermediate CAs, assign the capabilities to them. That way, if they ever need to revoke a certificate, you're not having to revoke the primary certificate authority. You only need to revoke the intermediate, kind of a firewall effect when you're dealing with all of these different pieces. Very useful to have that there. So know about your certificates, understand the certificate models, the trust models associated with these certificates. It becomes a little bit of a challenge to understand all of the details. So make sure you go through. They can be very confusing. So make sure you go through and understand that as well. Let's do another question. I've got one for you. Here's the question. Next on our list is a question that asks, which of these would be most likely blocked by an IPS? Which one of these would be most likely blocked by an IPS? Another one of these questions, of course, where I am asking you not for a definition of what an IPS is. I want to know how an IPS works. This is one where unless you have worked with an IPS or really understand the inner workings of an IPS, you're not going to be able to answer this question very well. The possible answers are an HTTPS connection to a web server, a ping scan, an unexpected bandwidth utilization, an MITM attack, or a transfer of PII. One of these would be most likely blocked by an IPS. That's that most likely that always gets you, isn't it? Because some of these things in this list, multiple things in this list, could possibly be blocked by certain IPSs that you might find. But I'm looking for one that would be most likely blocked. So you want to choose the answer here that most generically fits the model of what an IPS would block. That's my hint for you as you go through this particular question. If you think you know the answer, go to Socrative.com to the student login, and you can click to connect to the student room. The room name is Professor Messer, PROFESSORMESSER. And again, you have to be here live to participate in the Socrative room. Sometimes I'll get an email from folks on a Friday saying, I'm in the room. Where's all the questions? Well, it doesn't work on the replay, but you can still follow along on the replay. It becomes helpful as well when you're working along with all of these questions. Let's see how we did with these questions and working through them. The question here, which of these would be most likely blocked by an IPS, and how do we do? Well, we're a little torn. We definitely didn't hit 50% on this one. We have 37%, a clear number one, said a ping scan. And we're kind of tied for second. Both got pretty much the same number of answers: an unexpected bandwidth utilization and an MITM attack. And then single digits for transfer of PII and HTTPS connection to a web server. And in the chat room, somebody's saying, well, is an IPS a firewall as well? Well, that becomes a little more complicated. We'll talk about that in a moment, because there are a number of firewalls these days that also have IPS functionality integrated within them. It's very common. Not really a UTM. The folk in the chat room, people say, well, that's a UTM. Well, not these days. UTM's an older technology. These days, firewalls themselves are integrating these functionalities and having that IPS function and many other things built into the firewall itself. Most people will categorize these, and indeed Gartner has categorized these as next generation firewalls. I don't know what they'll call the next generation, the next generation of firewall, but these days they call those next generation firewalls. The Uber firewall will be next, I guess. I don't know what you will call the firewall. But let's talk about what an IPS might block. One of the very common things that an IPS would block would be a flood, would be someone trying to perform certain functions multiple times or many different kinds of similar functions on the network. Being able to block these floods of traffic are something that's very common to see in an IPS. There are also specialized products, specialized technologies out there that are designed to stop floods, but generally an IPS is one that can certainly handle that. Certain types of floods might be things like a SYN flood, where someone is trying to perform effectively a denial of service or a distributed denial of service attack onto a server by sending a lot of synchronized TCP SYNs and then not answering. So you're effectively filling up what a buffer might have on that device of available connections. It can be a little bit of a problem. You also have things like ping floods. Instead of sending SYNs, let's just send a lot of pings at one time, which require those devices to send a ping response. That's why you'll often see firewalls will just block pings completely. We don't even want to deal with pings on that. Port scans are another good example of someone trying to flood a device and have that there. And so this is one where there's an open port, there's a service that's available on that device, you can now scan that device and all of those different ports and have that there. That's one where you would absolutely see an IPS blocking that type of functionality. So let's go back to this list then that we have of all of these different things that could possibly be blocked by an IPS. Almost said firewall there. An IPS, 39% of you said ping scan. Indeed, you got that one absolutely correct. If you answered B, ping scan, that is the correct answer. But what about these other answers? Couldn't these also be blocked by an IPS? Traditionally, no. Traditionally, a man-in-the-middle attack, for example, is not even seen. You don't even know anyone is there. A man-in-the-middle attack is invisible to a firewall. It's invisible to an IPS. It's invisible to the other network devices. That's one of the beauties of a man-in-the-middle attack. That's why a man-in-the-middle attack is so bad, because you don't even know that they are there. So it would not be a man-in-the-middle attack. And unexpected bandwidth utilization is not something generally that an IPS will pay any attention to. There are technologies and some IPSs that will be able to watch utilization of the network, but they're not often blocking these unexpected bandwidth utilizations. What of those bandwidth utilizations are good and which ones are bad? How would you know? An IPS doesn't make that type of determination. So generally, bandwidth management, a completely different science, not one that you're going to put into an IPS. This is also, let's go to the next to last, transfer of PII, transfer of personally identifiable information, credit card numbers, social security numbers, healthcare records. Those are very personal pieces of information. Generally, it is not a IPS that is able to block those. Usually we see a web application firewall, a WAF is what is designed. It's different than a traditional network firewall. A web application firewall, very different in the way that operates. It has the same name firewall in there, and yet completely different products, completely different technologies, and a completely different way of working on the network. And HTTPS connection to a web server. IPSs generally aren't set up to block those. That's something you might want to do inside of your firewall. That is what's the best choice for blocking a certain type of connection to a server and have that there. It's one of those to have that there. This is one wherever you're dealing with these types of technologies. I think that's where you really get into the challenges of really understanding how to block these. And in the case of a flood like a ping scan, it's absolutely going to be blocked by an IPS. That is the correct answer. B, ping scan, 39% of you Did get that one absolutely right. There is a lot on the exam. There's a huge amount of information on the Security Plus exam. It's a very broad exam. A lot of folks like to use the GTS Learning Live Labs because of that. These live labs have devices, machines, a network of devices already set up for you in a lab environment. These are virtual devices as well. So you can really take advantage of stepping through how to configure the firewall, how to set up IPsec, how to implement some of these security technologies on a real network with real operating systems, not just simulations. These are virtual environments. These are full-blown machines that are running in these environments. And I find that I'm even using some of these to be able to get screenshots for some of the videos that I have available. I've got the live labs up right now. Application data establishing host security, protocol analyzers, network vulnerabilities, PKI concepts, radius, transitive trust, routers. I'm scrolling by so fast, but you can see all of the different topics that they have in these live labs. Let's do one we haven't done before, backup execution and frequency. And I'm going to use the interface here that I can fit on the screen. First, it sets up a lab. This is a very simple lab that has a single machine associated with it. Probably not the best to demonstrate the multiple machine capabilities, but you can still see how the lab would be set up. So you don't have to have the operating system. You don't have to run virtual environments. You don't have to need the disk space. You do all of this in a browser. You don't even have to install anything on your machine. There's no extra software to install. It all happens inside of your browser. So as I'm going through this lab, it will even show you in the lab all the things that you need to do. So here's the lab that I have here. We want to perform a server backup. It not only steps you what you need to do, but it shows you screenshots as well. So if you're stuck on a particular lab, I don't know how to implement that, I don't know how to configure that, it's okay. They've got the instructions for you right here, and you can step by step. And once you're done, if you really didn't get it, you can reset the whole lab, go back to the beginning, and step through it again. Because this is a virtual environment, you've now got complete control. In fact, if you want to go off script, maybe you didn't want to follow this, you think, what would happen if I did this other thing? Go do it. Because it's a virtual environment that you can't mess up anything. So you can really work through this and try out all these different capabilities yourself. This is also one where there's special pricing available for these live labs. Make sure that you use my link to be able to do that. These live labs normally $169. If you go directly to the GTS Learning website, I get a special price. You get a special price because you're here on this live event. Make sure you use the link here at the bottom of the screen, professormesser.com/seclabs, SEC Labs, so that you're able to get the special price of $109, $60 off, just because you happen to be in this live event. And you can connect to this study group. You can walk through all the functionalities of this device. You can see it's a full Windows machine. Look how fast it is. This is just screenshots, and it's all built into the capabilities of this particular machine. Now I can step through the entire lab, jump from one machine to another, and have all of these capabilities thanks to the folks at GTS Learning and their live labs. I want to thank them also for their ongoing support. Would not be able to do these study groups without their support of what we do here at Messer Studios. So thanks a lot, GTS Learning. Find out more at professormesser.com/seclabs. Let's do another question. I want to get through a couple of more. I think we've got a few more available to you. Here's a big long question I have. And again, a very specific question. Make sure we really go through the questions. You can kind of see it here. My head's in the way. But the question is, as a United States federal agency, which of the following would be the best way to define, I left out a two there, to define security controls that would be used between organizations? See, somebody needs to correct my writing on here. As a United States federal agency, which of the following would be the best way to define security controls that would be used between organizations? There's got to be one of these. Now, I have the options for you, but you may not like what the answers are. The answers are SLA, EULA, ISA, ARO, BPA. Oh, man, are you kidding? It's nothing but acronyms. And in fact, again, a two-step process. I need to understand the best way to define security controls between organizations as a United States federal agency. And then I also have to know what these different pieces are. So don't answer in the chat room. Make sure you don't know that either. Make sure you go through the Socrative.com, go to the student login to Room Professor Messer, and you indeed can absolutely go through this and answer what you think. Now, don't Google the different acronyms. You should, if you don't know, take a guess, because that's what situation you'll be in on the exam. If you don't know, you should always guess. Never leave an answer blank. Never, never, never leave an answer blank. You can always take a guess. If you're wrong, it's not going to count against you. But if you leave it blank, there's not even a chance you get it right. Hopefully, you will be able to get this right. So in the chat room, people are asking, is this exam international or U.S.-centric? Well, most of the people that take the Security Plus are in the U.S., but even if you're outside of the U.S., you may be connecting to a U.S. entity or perhaps a U.S. federal agency. So you absolutely need to know these pieces. And of course, a lot of organizations, a lot of governmental organizations in other countries have similar concepts for their networks as well. So it's important you know the different answers that you might get on this. Let's see how we did on this question. Well, 57% said ISA, 20% said SLA, 13% said EULA, 6% said BPA, and then 5% said ARO. So what would, as a federal agency, be this? Now you can see these are really different agreements that I've listed in this particular question. A memorandum of understanding, for example, something very commonly done between two organizations, just as a casual letter. Like, here's what we're planning. Obviously, it's not a contract. Nobody's signing anything. That's something you have to think about. There may be, in fact, statements about confidentiality between those memorandums of understanding. Service level agreements are done as part of a contract to guarantee a certain amount of service. Maybe it's a certain bandwidth. Maybe it's a certain amount of uptime. It's usually done with a service provider. And this is something well outside the scope of just a single federal agency. Everybody uses service level agreements, whether you're federal agencies or private organization. There are also business partnership agreements, these BPAs. This is very commonly done when you're partnering with another business. But in our particular case, we were asking about the U.S. federal government. There are all these different types of organizations within the government and connections outside the government. And there has to be a minimum set of security standards between all of those particular connections. So to be able to identify what those standards are is the Interconnection Security Agreement, the ISA or the ISA. This is used primarily by the U.S. federal government, and this way it's able to define what the minimum and very specific security controls are when you're communicating between these different organizations. It becomes pretty important to know the differences. So if you're someone who answered ISA, the 60% of you, good numbers there. If you answered ISA, you got that one absolutely right. It would not be a service level agreement. Again, that's anybody can have a service level agreement, not just the United States federal agency. And end user licensing agreement, usually done when you're installing software or purchasing software. That's not a federal agency thing. ARO, the ARO and the BPA, not the answers either whenever we start working through all of these different options. This is whenever you start calculating risk and needing to know what the ARO is. So risk calculation has nothing to do with a federal agency. And the BPAs, we talked about the business partners agreement, to have that there as well. So very useful to have that capability there. Any of those pieces, I think, become pretty handy to know what those are and working through them. So let's see how we're doing in this. Yeah, people in the chat room, I thought EULA was made up. It sounds funny. Nope, it's an actual real thing. The end user license agreement. EULAs are, they're often an important part of purchasing software. If you ever get into the software purchasing world, it becomes pretty important to keep up with your EULAs. Let's do another question. This question, your computers and backups have been infected with ransomware. Ugh, that's not good. Sorry about that. Which of these would be the best way to get your data back? Really good question. So I have some options for you. So computers and backups infected with ransomware. Where's this note? Oh, it's all in the notes. Everything you see here is in the notes. Trust me. Your computers and backups are infected with ransomware. Which of these would be the best way to get your data back? Would it be to brute force the encryption key? Would it be to perform a reverse proxy on the encryption mechanism? Would it be to purchase the decryption key? Would it be to rebuild your data files manually? Or would it be to use the Windows previous version feature to restore older file versions? There might even be other things you could do, but I didn't list those. This is something that's very commonly done on the exam. It says, which of these would be the best answer? So it's giving you only a finite list of things. There are other things you probably could do to get your data back that's not listed here, but that's too bad. I'm not asking you that question, and CompTIA doesn't either. So the real answer here is one of these. You have to choose the best answer in this list. We'll talk more about that in a moment. If you think you know what the answer is, don't go through here and get this question. Make sure you go through and really figure out those pieces. Maybe you happen to know. Maybe you've been infected with ransomware. You might know all too well the best way to get your data back. Maybe you know which one of these it happens to be. If you do, go to Socrative.com to the student login. Go to the room, Professor Messer. Maybe you know the answer as well whenever you're working through this. I think you should be able to have the answers here as well. Don't answer in the chat room. You want to try it out yourself. See if you happen to know what this happens to be in here. I think that's one that becomes very useful when you're working through things like trying to recover from a security event. It becomes very, very useful to know what those answers happen to be working through them. I think many of you might know. I'm going to take a peek, actually. I think many of you might know the answer to this one. Let's see how we did with this answer. So your computers and backups have been infected. How do we do? Well, 49% said use the Windows previous version to restore older file versions. 25% said purchase a decryption key. 14% said rebuild your data files manually. 10% said perform a reverse proxy on the encryption mechanism. And 1% said brute force the encryption key. Now, in the chat room, people are putting speculation into the question, which is exactly what I told you not to do. You have to look at every question at face value. You have to take what the question is asking very specifically and apply it to the only answers available to you. Could there be other? The answer in my mind is you restore from a known good backup, because of course you did backups, didn't you? So that is really the best way to recover the data that's been lost. But I didn't give you that as an answer. Maybe our backups were corrupted as well, or encrypted as well, or maybe we didn't have backups. But that, even what I think is the best answer, wasn't an answer that was listed. So now we've got to look at what the possible answers might be here. So the problem with ransomware is that it is first pervasive. It seems to be an extremely popular way of taking your data and holding it and asking you to provide cash to get the data back. It becomes a little bit of a challenge, and it encrypts everything. It encrypts everything in your keeps your operating system running, but encrypts all of your data. And if you're connecting to a shared drive and you have write access to that shared drive, it's going to encrypt the shared drive. If you're connecting to a share that has your backups, it's going to encrypt your backups. It encrypts everything, but it's going to keep your operating system running. It's one of the beauties of this, because they are going to pop up a screen that says, hey, if you want any data back, you're going to need to give us some money. And you're going to need to do it through these ways. Usually it's an untraceable system to provide them with the money. This is something that is also using public key cryptography. You're not going to be able to brute force this. There's not enough time in the universe for you to be able to brute force the actual key. Now, there have been some, this type of ransomware technology, some types of ransomware, people have the main key. So they're able to create encryption keys for those that you have. But a lot of the other encryption mechanisms that are being used these days on the most modern, the newest types of ransomware, there's no way to brute force that back. It becomes a little bit of a challenge to have that there. So maybe when you're working through what these possible answers might be, have a thought in here about what this happens to be. Let me send a note here. I know we're right in the middle of this, but I have a delivery, of course, that has arrived. So I want to tell the rest of the folks in the house that there is the folks that are here. I might even have to run away after this first hour. We're at the top of the hour anyway. Let's see how we did with this answer. The question is, the answers here, use the Windows previous version to restore older file versions. Well, actually, that would not be the right answer, because those older file versions are going to be encrypted as well. It becomes a little bit more of a challenge now. 23% of you that said purchase the decryption key, that is the right answer. Purchasing the decryption key is the one that really is the correct answer, and being able to have that there. I'm going to say whenever we start dealing with problems, of course, have the backup, but of course, have the decryption key there. And being able to purchase it really, unfortunately, based on these answers, is the only way to get it back. You're not going to be able to reverse proxy the encryption mechanism. I made that up. I don't even know what that is. You're not going to be able to brute force. You're never going to get through there. And you're not going to be able to rebuild your data files manually either. It becomes more of a challenge to have that there. So this is one whenever you start dealing with ransomware, unfortunately, there's a very nasty side of this. And that whenever I start dealing with what are my possible options, sometimes paying the bad guys is a lot less expensive than having to recreate this data and have that there. Such a challenge whenever you're working through those problems. So I think even though it's not something we like, it's not very palatable, it's not something you want to do, but unfortunately, purchasing the decryption key for this particular question with the particular options we have available really was the best answer. So if you answered C, purchase the decryption key, 23% of you got that one absolutely correct. Probably not the best one to go out for the final answer, the final question that we have for these this particular month, but that really is the right answer in dealing with all of the challenges associated with those. And in fact, the chat room, you're right. It doesn't even guarantee that you're going to get a decryption key, but usually they do. But why do they do that? Why do they give you the encryption key? Don't you think the bad guys would just tell you, nope, no encryption key for you? Well, of course they're going to give you the encryption key, because if it gets out that they don't give you the decryption key, nobody else is going to give them any money. Of course they're business people. They're going to do whatever keeps that business working. Absolutely. So they're going to take your money and they're going to give you the decryption key, and you're going to get your money back. You're going to get your dollars back, your data back. You don't get your dollars back. You get your data back. Usually it works. This is one of the worst things you can think of when dealing with technology these days. And unfortunately, it's just one of those things that we now have to worry about, is having our data. Make sure you have a backup. Have a good backup and have that there. Well, this is one whenever, by the way, if you're watching this for continuing education credit, one of the things that I will do is give you a full hour of watching this webinar for CEU credit. What you'll want to do is go to the top or the bottom of my website. There's a contact us link. Make sure you follow this process or you don't get the credit. Click contact us, which is really contact me. Put into that contact us link that you are watching the January 2017 Security Plus study group. I'll need your name. I'll need your email address. And then you want to use the special code word of ransomware. That's our special code word of the month, is ransomware. Make sure you put that somewhere in that message. They're messages that come to me. This isn't an automated process. I go through these myself. If you want to put another note in there, a message to me, you're welcome to do that as well. I'm the one reading them. So you're able to put anything in there, but just make sure the word ransomware is somewhere in there, and make sure that you're going to the top or the bottom of the website, clicking the Contact Us link. Not only is the ransomware word important, but the process of what you're doing is important. All of this must be done properly to be able to get the continuing education unit credit. And I'll go through, usually once a week, I go through these and I send out those CEUs that you have access to those. Very useful to have that there. If you really want to complicate things, see if you can really get it working, send it to me as a PGP encrypted message. Ooh, I will not send it back to you as an encrypted message, but you can try sending it to me and seeing if I can decrypt it. If I can, I'll send you a note back saying I wasn't able to. But you can, of course, try that. Make sure your key is available either on a public key server or that you are sending the key along with the message so that I can decrypt it. Something very useful. That would be your public key. My public key is what you're encrypting with, and I need your public key to be able to, well, I'm not encrypting anything back to you, so I really don't need your public key. You just need to encrypt it. You need my public key, and I'm on the public key servers. under James at ProfessorMesser.com. So you're able to find me pretty easily. I should probably put it on my website somewhere. That'd be a good thing to do. You know, all of these in the Security Plus exam is extensive. There are so many things you have to know on this exam. Even the chat room, people are saying, where did this question come from? Where did this topic come from? Are those topics that are even covered on the exam? Yes, they are. And they're all in the exam objectives. Make sure you go to Google, make sure that you type in that you're looking for the Google. You want to type in the CompTIA exam objectives. Those are the three things that will get you to the right place. Or you can go to the CompTIA website and hunt around for it. Or you can go to ProfessorMesser.com/objectives, and then I send you over to CompTIA to the right place. This has everything inside of it. Everything. Everything you would need to know about what's on the exam. People ask me all the time, what do I need to know? It's in the exam objectives. How do I know if I'm ready to take the exam? Because you can go through the exam objectives and check off every single thing that's in there. How do I know if a particular topic is covered on the exam? It's in the exam objectives. It's my first thing that you should do. My recommendation, the first thing you should do is get the exam objectives and read through them. And it's also the last thing you should do before going into the exam, because it makes a great checklist to be able to do that. Make sure you know everything that is in these objectives, and you're going to be fine. You'll be fine. Well, we've come to the end of an hour of a study group. Can you believe it? But I do one of these every month, so don't worry. We'll meet again in a month, and we'll go through another set of questions. The next live study group for Security Plus is on February the 15th. It's like I have an A+ study group on the 1st, I have a Network Plus study group on the 8th, and a Security Plus study group on the 15th. Now, by the way, those continuing education units in chat room, yes, they absolutely will work on a replay as well. You can go back and listen to all of the study groups, and I'll give you credit. That's why I give you a special code word, because I know that you had to watch it, and the code word's different every month. So you're welcome to stop by. If you weren't able to watch this one live, you're watching on the replay, and you'd like to be able to attend. The next one's on February 15th. If this is after February the 15th of 2017, then you go to ProfessorMesser.com/calendar and know when exactly the right time might be for the next live event. Well, I want to thank you for joining us. Make sure you stick around for the next hour, where I just open up the phone lines. We talk about anything. It doesn't have to be Security Plus, but this is the end of our Q&A session. Thanks for joining us. Remember the Security Plus course notes. You can read all about those at ProfessorMesser.com/securitycn. Don't forget about us on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. You type in ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube/Twitter/Facebook/Instagram/ whatever it happens to be, and you'll find us somewhere out there. Don't forget about the discounted vouchers. You've got vouchers available at ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. And again, that special discount you get through GTS Learning can only be found by following the link at ProfessorMesser.com/seclabs. And of course, thanks to all of you. I would not be able to do one of these events every week without your help, without you participating, without your feedback, without the crazy comments in the chat room. It's a fantastic, thank you for joining us. Cannot thank you enough. Well, that brings us to the end of the formal part of the study group. Stick around for the second half if you can. Otherwise, we will see you next time on the Security Plus study group. Thanks, everyone. Oh my. Welcome to the after show, everyone. Welcome. Oh, I've done something to my video switcher. If you were on the pre-show, you saw that the video switcher, I was flipping around and it did things like this. I don't know what I did, but I did something. I'll have to reset that. I think I did know what I did. Which virtual input is that? Is that V1? I think it is V1. I can do different things. Well, we're not going to be able to pop up the phone lines there, are we? Because that's what I have on that virtual input. I wonder what's there. It's so small, so tiny to have that there. It's a little bit more of a challenge to have that there. Well, I have, where do I access the PKI on the Professor Messer web? My public key is on some of the, that image isn't going to work. My public key is available on the public key servers that are out there. If you search for ProfessorMesser.com, you will see all the keys, probably just my key that comes up for Professor Messer. So that one that's there. How am I going to put the phone number up if I don't have a way to put the phone number up? Do I have a way to put the phone number up? There's the graphic. I could probably blend together. How about a V3? How about I change V2? I never use V2. And there's V2, and I could put my face, and I could put the graphic on it. Can I? Can I not put the graphic on it? Do I do this? That's what I do. So let's put the graphic up. We're doing this on the fly, people, so that we can have all of the phone numbers there. This is what it is. Whenever I start working through producing a live event like this, I keep saying, I'll get a producer and we'll be able to do that. No, I never get a producer. We don't have anything there to produce. That means more people in here. That's not going to work. So there's the phone line. It's not up and running yet. And I'll answer questions in the chat room as well. If you have questions in the chat room, you can do that, or you can call into the phone lines in just a moment, because I'm going to get the call-in lines going. I have to log in to my system. It's all cloud-based. It's in the cloud. So I have to log into the cloud, and then I have to call the cloud myself. If you'd like to call the cloud and talk to me once I get this up and running, you can call at toll-free in the U.S., 855-785-7545. Or you can Skype free on Skype anywhere in the world with +1 855-785-RJ45. So that becomes handy to have that there. I need a number here. I'm typing numbers in.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
And again, every time. Welcome. So this is one where it's my 6-digit PIN number, which is redundant. I know. Yes, I got it. Thank you. Thank you, nice lady. Very nice. I like the Cisco certifications. I think it's a good, if you're want to get into security, you need to know a lot about networking. You need to know as much as you can about networking, and the way that the Cisco classes are set up, the Cisco certifications are set up, they're teaching you fundamental technologies, and then also how to implement them on Cisco technologies. But once you understand how spanning tree works, once you understand how VLANs work, once you understand how IPsec works, you can apply it to any device. Makes it very easy. Let's go straight to the phones, though. It's one of those, being able to have this here. Let's go to the 404 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Yeah, how you doing? My name is Rajan.
Hey, Rajan. Thanks for calling.
I have a question. Hey, thanks for answering the call. I'm a single dad of 3 children, and I've been in a company for a while, just doing service desk and getting to know everything from that perspective.
Sure.
Now, things have increased in reference to security, and I'm talking to a lot of people, and they say, hey, you need to get some certifications. So I've been here for like 8 years, but not really played around with it too much as far as certifications. So now I'm on the certification tip. I'm going through, I was like, okay, what's the best place to start? Okay, I found a mentor. You're my virtual one, for one.
Excellent.
And then the second thing, I said, okay, I need to start with Security Plus. From there, I'm kind of lost as to where I should go from there in order to move up in the company. Now, I've heard I need to get some experience outside the company and come back, but I'm really connected to the company because it's like a family vibe there. So I want just a good path to success when it comes to certifications and where to start from.
Sure. This is probably one of the biggest challenges, because if you start looking at what security jobs are available out there, there are not a lot of entry-level security jobs. People don't tend to go into security right out of school, right out of college, as their first IT position is very, very rarely a security position. There are some out there, security positions. There's absolutely security jobs that are designed to be that entry-level security, but they're very rare and they're very hard to find. I come from a networking background, and my last formal position working for a third party was in IT security, more specifically with the next generation firewall company. So I got to go to literally hundreds of companies, walk in their door, meet with the security teams. In fact, many times it's people that I've worked with through the years that are on the security team, because I used to work in network analysis and network troubleshooting. And what I found was many of the people that were on the network side have now moved into security. It seems to be a very common path, not just in one organization, but seems everywhere I walk in, that's the way it worked. And it makes sense to me, because a lot of what you do in IT security, I'm talking specifically about IT security, there's many facets to security and technology. There's security on the computer science side with programming and making sure that your applications are secure. There's security dealing with people trying to break in and understanding how how they're breaking into systems and understanding the exploits. Not really talking about those sides. I'm really talking about IT security, keeping your network up and running, maintaining security for the data in your environment, making sure that you have encrypted connections to other departments and third parties that you're working with, making sure that your mobile devices are secure, making sure that you have some type of multi-factor authentication that's working properly. All of those are IT security. And almost universally, the people that are working in those departments either come from a networking background or they already have an extremely strong foundation in networking. And it just makes sense because everything I just mentioned all has an underlying networking component. You see this when working with MDMs, mobile device managers. You see this when working with SIMs, where you're logging all of these different devices, switches, and routers and bringing them all back to a database so that you can look through all the security events that have occurred over a certain amount of time and create reports. It's making sure that operating systems are secure. It's setting up firewalls into a layer 3 mode with IPsec tunnels between those. Everything I just mentioned, almost everything there is networking with a little bit of security sprinkled on top of that. It's kind of a universal truth in IT security. And I think the people that do the best in security are the ones with that strong networking background. It's not a requirement per se. It's not something that if you have a strong background in networking that it's going to guarantee you a job in security. But boy, it really, really helps to have that there, to have that networking knowledge, because once you get into, let's just take a firewall or an IPS, you're implementing a piece of technology into the network. You're usually implementing it as a redundant system. How are you going to handle the routing whenever one of those devices fails? Assuming you're running it layer 3, you need to know about routing protocols. How do you integrate those with the switches that you have? Are they going to be set up on access points? Are you going to trunk to those devices and set up virtual interfaces that's going to be able to handle all the IP addresses for the trunks? That's just all networking. It's like setting up a router, except it also does firewalling. So my recommendation when people are saying, I really like security, I want to do more with security, my recommendation is, oddly enough, don't worry about the security part as much as you need to worry about the networking part, because that's where everything is going to build on. Once you got the networking down, you'll be able to layer the security on top of that relatively easily, because the networking part's kind of the hard part. The security part's kind of easy when you start trying to put it all together. There's obviously a lot you need to know on the security side, and a lot of very unique things about the security world. But unless you know how the network is working, none of this will make any sense to you whatsoever. So that's probably the biggest recommendation. I think Security Plus is also a good place to start. A lot of the security certifications that are out there in the industry, the OSCP, the Offensive Security Certified Professional, is looked upon very highly. CISSP is the gold standard in certifications for security. They have been for many, many years anyway. But even then, to get a CISSP, you've already needed to work in security a certain number of years, and you have to have someone sponsor you. So it's not something you can just walk in and get a CISSP. Security Plus tends to be a better place to start with all of those and go that direction. I think it becomes very useful to have that there. So that's my recommendation, is work on the networking side, keep an eye out for security, learn as much as you can about the next generation firewalls, learn as much as you can about SIMs, ask the security people in your organization or in other organizations, what are you doing for reporting? What are you doing for your firewall? Have you implemented a next generation firewall? How are you handling all of the certificates that are all over your web servers? These are all concerns that security people have. Ping them. They're going to be interested that you're interested in that too. So that becomes useful as well to have that there. I think you're in a very good place right now, because you're right. Security is very hot. There's not enough people that are available to fill these security jobs. It's a very interesting market right now that if you know security, you can kind of move around to wherever you'd like right now. So I agree with you. It may be a very advantageous thing to work towards.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So let me ask you one more question
Sure.
real quick. In reference to, continue, I've been studying the Security Plus for about a month now, and unfortunately I heard I got in contact with you after the fact, that I just went gun-ho and I registered with another website for labs and everything, but I bought some material from your website as well as a study guide. That study guide is excellent, by the way. Thank you. Should I continue with the Security Plus or switch it up and just go straight to networking? And I've only been studying for a month now, but I do get a lot of hands-on training, and I'm able to talk to people in the security group, and they're the one that told me to go, okay, check out Security Plus and then see ISSP, and I didn't know what CSISP was until I started doing my research.
Right.
But so you're saying, should I switch it up and go straight to networking and put the security down and then go into security afterwards, or stick with what I'm doing right now and then go into networking certification as well?
And on my website, when people come to my site for the very first time and they're needing their first certification, they're going in two different directions. Many people get the A+ certification first because they're focusing on more of a help desk or service desk role, and that makes sense for what they're doing. The other very large portion of people coming to my site for the first time and getting their first certification is the Security Plus certification, primarily because in the United States, the U.S. federal government requires a minimum of Security Plus to work in an IT role within either the government itself or a third party that is associated with the federal government. So it just makes sense that a lot of people start with Security Plus. It's a very common place to start. The things you learn on Security Plus are important things to know as well. There's not a lot of overlap with Network Plus. And I think either one is a good place to start. Security Plus gives you a very nice overview of what you need to learn in the security environment. And then it's very easy, of course, to backtrack to Network Plus to get any of the, or even other networking certifications, to find the other things you need to combine with those. I think the network and the security are ultimately going to need to be combined together, but I think either one is a good place to start.
Fabulous. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Good luck, sir.
Thank you.
It is a challenge. And folks in the chat room are saying, yeah, but I've talked to security people. They're not going to help me in my company. Maybe they won't. There's some organizations where the corporate culture is one where other departments don't help other departments. I get that. You don't have to talk to people within your organization. Go outside your organization. There, I guarantee you, there is a security group of some kind, whether it's Cisco, Palo Alto Networks, Checkpoint, maybe just a very well-rounded, non-vendor specific user group in your area. Go to the user group. Those people love to talk. They will talk your ear off. You ask them anything, they're more than happy because you're all together in the user group. So don't think you have to stay in that one place. Go get a pizza with those guys. Go watch a presentation with some of the neat stuff they've done and ask them, what are you guys doing when you're trying to hire people in security? What type of credentials are you looking for? Becomes pretty nice to have that there. Let's go back to the phone lines. I'm sorry, a lot of you have dropped off. You've just gotten tired of waiting. In the 240 area code, you've waited a long time. Thanks for holding. What's your name?
Hey, how are you, Professor? My name is Marcelo.
Hey, Marcelo. Thanks for holding. What's your question?
No, not a problem. It's a pleasure to talk to you, Professor. Well, I am calling you just to tell you I don't have a question right now, but I'm calling you to let you know the outstanding job that you are doing for all of us that we are, focusing on taking this test. And I appreciate so much. My career path, I started not even working as a help desk professor. I was cleaning the cables and blow out computers that were coming from the field.
Yep.
For my interest at that, when somebody just referred to your website, and then he said, this guy, does a lot of, classes online, and after watching all your videos and purchased a couple of your stuff that you are selling on your website, all your tools, oh my God, that really opened my eyes. And I am now A+ and Network Plus certified.
Nice.
And I'm still going for my Security Plus now. And the good thing, Professor, I've been blessed first to watch all your videos, all the things that you do for all of us. And I was working with this company for 10 years. They never wanted me to, give a raise, and they always asking for certifications and all that. I got my A plus, and then I started, throwing out some applications online. And guess what? As soon as I got my Network Plus, I got hired by the FDA
Nice.
IT Help Desk. And they are paying me so good. And I'm just telling you, all these people that are listening, keep up when you started, because I can never be blessed so much to have this job now, and I'm, still looking for better, path in my career. But the main thing, I want to thank you, Professor. You are one of those guys that are doing so much for all of us, the ones that they're really picking up the books now. And, all I can say, thank you very much. And, God bless you, sir. You really helped me a lot.
You're very welcome. And although
everything you're doing right now.
I like to say that I do the easy part, because I'm just sitting in this room making some videos, talking with people that are on the internet and just hoping for the best. But ultimately, you're having to do the hard part. You're the one that has to take the exams. You're the one that has to go out there on these meetings. You have to go through the process of finding the jobs that are out there, hunting them down, putting your best face on forward whenever you're meeting in these interviews. And it's I think people like you who are dedicated to keeping this moving forward are the most important part of this. So thank you as well. And thanks for your support of the website.
No problem. And you know what? I'm telling my friends, because I used to work in the restaurants like years ago, and then that job I knew it was not for me. But now I'm so blessed to have all my certs. Well, I got one more to go, but I'm sure in the next couple months I'm going to take my security class. And that's the next level for me, And once again, thank you very much, Professor.
I think those are the best jobs, the ones you hate. I worked in agriculture, and here in the southern United States, that means I would get into the back of a pickup. They drive me 10, 15 miles out of town, and I would need to hoe a bunch of weeds in a field all day. It's those kinds of jobs that really help motivate you into doing something that maybe is in the air conditioning, where you're not running around with people.
That is correct. I mean, any job, it's good, but there's persons like you and I that it was not meant for us.
It's not meant for me.
Thing, when I started watching, I knew it was like, I need something else. My eye opener was first my job that I was start working as a cleaning the cables, and then the key was your website. All your professormason.com site, it was the correct tool to anybody. So whenever I see friends like that, I always refer them to watch your videos, to chat with you, and they are doing it. I have my nephew that now he's halfway on his, he already passed the first test on the A class. Now he's looking for the second one so he can get his third. He's just something, he's just waiting to get his A class, and then he's going to move on in life. Thank you, Professor.
I have to say, those are the people that are actually working for a living. I'm not working. I'm at a desk. I'm typing things into the keyboard. Those are the people that are actually working. So you're right. Not exactly the path I wanted to follow either. And I think that one of the advantages and one of the reasons I made this company is because I think technology is one where you can do anything. You can be financially successful. You can find a job that is gratifying. You can work for some very good companies that are doing very good things. And I think that's really the best of all worlds. So congratulations to you. There is probably, I think, one of the, in fact, it's one of the things that was mentioned earlier. These last two calls, people were talking about going to get that job. And I was reading an excerpt from a book, and I really need to get this book. But the whole book wasn't about getting a job. The book's about something else, but it talked about the hiring process. And one of the things I found very interesting was that they said, don't be afraid to ask for the job. And it's something I don't think I've ever done when I've sat down in an interview. And people said, well, do you have any questions for us? And I ask questions about the company or whatever, but it's your opportunity to say something. And one of the things that they recommended was that you can tell the person right then, when you're sitting there like, well, I don't necessarily have a question for you, but I want to let you know that if you were to offer this job to me right now, I would take it. That's how much I want to work here. That's how much I want this job. Just so you know, I'm in. If you're interested in having me as an employee, I'm willing to come on board right now and answer yes. Even if they don't offer the job right then, saying that to a potential employer, and I'm speaking as someone who's been on the other side of the desk, who's trying to find someone, that goes a long way. So I think that was a very good tip to remind people to tell a potential employer, you're ready. You're in, you've done the research. You wouldn't be sitting here if you didn't want to work here. And I'm ready. Let's make me an offer. Let's go. I loved that. I thought that was great. Maybe that's something you can use as well. If you're in a position where you're interviewing something you really want, why didn't I do this at my last job? I sat there in the interview and I'm thinking, I really want this job. I would love to have this job. I got the job, but they didn't want to give me the job. They wanted to go somewhere else and get someone else for that position. I was very, very lucky that they finally, after I had third parties go around and speak on my behalf because they didn't want to hire me. And it was one where I should have said in the interview, if you ask me right now, I will accept this job. I just think that's strong. Maybe not when can I start? That's a little presumptuous. But if you ask me, if you want to offer this job to me, I will accept it right now. It's kind of saying when I can start, isn't it? It's not like you're being cocky about it. You're saying, I want that. I want to work in this job, and have that there. So those of you asking in the chat room, this goes back now. I've been talking now for 30 minutes. Somebody was asking, is the background real? Yes, the background is real. That's a real NLX motherboard. You can't really see. My son he drew this is many, many years ago, but he drew an Atari joystick. I just thought that was awesome. It's my, and that's my, I got an Apple keyboard there. My humidor's there. An Apple cube. Yeah, it's real. That's a real, can I throw something at it? I don't have anything to throw. It's a real background. These are real things. I have to unhook myself to go back here. This is real stuff. You can't even see me. This is all legit. It's all real stuff. I actually considered putting in a green screen. And when we were designing the new studio, I built this from scratch. And we were thinking, should I do a green screen? Because green screen is pretty straightforward. You just put the green screen in here. You really can't see it from this side. That's the other camera. But you would just put a green screen, light it up, and you can put anything you want back there. But they never look right, do they? They never look good enough. And quite honestly, having used green screens before in the past, they are really difficult to light. And you have to have just the right manager, the right technology that can filter out the green properly. And those are not inexpensive to be able to do that in real time. Those are just as big of a challenge. So ultimately I said, green screens, it's too much problem. I have something real. And then I can put my own stuff back there. I can fill it up with whatever. That is ham radio. That is amateur radio. Being in Florida, we're headquartered here in Tallahassee, Florida. And I was living in South Florida in the Miami area when Hurricane Andrew went through in 1991. And obviously that was when we had just had cell phones. Cell phones were a relatively new technology, but a lot of people had them. And it just blew down all of the cell phone towers. Boom, no cell phone coverage. And that's what everybody thought. Well, if there's a hurricane and my phone isn't working at home, because we all had phones at home at that point, I'll just use my cell phone, not realizing there was a whole infrastructure there. And right after that went through, I got my amateur radio license and AG4DX. And that was after the upgrade. I think I started with KE4LAY and then upgraded to AG4DX. Not a vanity call sign, by the way. I got AG4DX for those who are not in ham radio, they don't care. Those who aren't in radio, got DX in my call sign without asking for DX in my call sign was pretty cool. So yeah, they've got, that's my Yaesu. Usually I use an ICOM. That is one of the two transceivers, HF transceivers that I got on a federal government auction down in Miami. Because they're relatively expensive, but I got both of them for $250, and it was nobody there knew anything about amateur radio. These came out of somebody's boat, the bad guys. That's a little bit more of a thing, but I was glad to have them. So I do have the amateur radio license is up around here somewhere. I've got it. Probably not somewhere you can see. And you can't see up higher, but I have some packet equipment, SWR meter, antenna tuner. It's up higher. You can't even see it, but it is up there. Yeah, every side of the Rubik's Cube is white. Everybody asks about the Rubik's Cube. Let's turn it on. Now have I powered it up? I think it's not even powered up. So let's power it up. I think I got power. It doesn't have any power, so it's going to flash red and then it's going to turn off. I've not charged the battery, but it lights up. There's lights inside of it, and they all light up as if it's an actual cube. And you just spin your finger, you touch your finger to it, and it changes the lights inside of it as if it doesn't twist. You just like touch it like you're touching a cell phone and have it there. It's kind of a pain to use. It's kind of a pain to solve because if you're someone who solves a Rubik's Cube, sort of muscle memory, how you're turning it, flip, 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 flip. And I can do a regular Rubik's Cube that way. It's hard to do that one because you have to think, am I turning it? It doesn't actually turn to have that there. So no, I don't really use it. But it's nice for background. Sometimes I'll turn on, it'll blink and have that there. It's sort of a neat technology. I don't think it ever caught on. I don't even know if you can still buy them. It was a great gift somebody got me for those. I got my extra microphones back there too. Got to have that back there. Don't use that anymore. One of these days I need to power up that Mac Cube and do a video. I haven't done that in a long time. I don't think I've ever done a video with it. I don't have anything there to even show to have that there. I love those. Rubik's Cube was always that mystery thing in high school. It took a while. I bought the book. How do you solve this thing? And it's just a set of steps. It's not like it's a magic solution, but you do them for somebody who's never been able to solve one before. It's like magic when you do it and have that there. Let's go back to the chat. Some folks are asking some other questions about this. Yeah, I could light the fireplace, but it's hot in here. It's hot outside. What's the bird feeder show it right now? For those of you that have watched from time to time, this is my backyard. It is currently 76 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a little warm out. And you can see it's definitely here in Florida. We're having a very mild winter and having that there. So that becomes handy. In the chat room, some people were asking about my input on Cisco certifications. I said I was going to circle back to that. And from a security perspective, Cisco has a huge market share. They are not as much as they are on switching and routing, however. Obviously, Check Point has kind of had the firewall market up until the last 7-8 years or so. And then Palo Alto Networks came along and really just started eating everybody's lunch. That's who I went to work for about 9 years ago. And that was that job. I really, really wanted the job. They didn't want to hire me. And ultimately they did, thankfully. And I worked there 7 years, and now I do this full time. But that's one where those certifications in the security world are so much of a challenge. I think primarily because it's sort of a disjointed, niche-y industry. It's a very big industry. It's a massive industry. But it is kind of niche-y, and there are things that are important that you need to be able to do that are very specific to manufacturers. So if you have a Cisco firewall, it's important to have a Cisco certification for that firewall. If you have a Palo Alto Networks firewall, it's important to have the Palo Alto Network certification. If you have Checkpoint, it's important to have Checkpoint. So that's one where it becomes pretty useful to have that knowledge because there are idiosyncrasies and uniqueness to each one of those manufacturers' products. There's a lot also overlap. IPsec is IPsec is IPsec. But especially now with the latest generation of firewalls that have IPS and URL filtering and malware detection and cloud-based malware detection and firewalling at the application layer and all those other pieces, becomes a little bit more of a challenge to manage those devices. There are very few people, if any, that would be using every single capability of a next generation firewall because there's just so much in there. Becomes a challenge. Meraki firewalls, I've never run into any. So I don't think they're one I really see in an enterprise. Most of what I did at Palo Alto Networks, because it's an enterprise firewall, or with large organizations, medium-sized to large organizations. Those are the types of people looking for that firewalls. You've got, multi-gigabit speed firewalls, 10, 20, 100 gigabit firewalls, multiple devices, redundancy. You're integrating into very large environments. Those are, some of these firewalls were, big boxes, 12U high boxes with slots. It was crazy to have that there. That's why I think when you see in the security industry, there's certain certifications that everybody focuses on. Security Plus is one of them, is entry level, but everybody's kind of working toward the CISSP, and everybody who's hiring for security really looks at CISSP as a pretty good certification to have. It's kind of the gold standard of what you should have in security. It's not the be-all, end-all of certifications, but it's so broad and it has such stringent requirements on experience. You have to have somebody who will vouch for you, who signs off as your sponsor to get the certification. It's extensive. And I think it's that exclusivity of the exclusivity of the certification that makes it very appealing to employers. And it's a good certification. It's no slouch when it comes to you need to know what's on that exam to pass it. What is it, an 8-hour exam? Some crazy number. It's all day to take this exam. So it's one that you better know your stuff if you're taking that exam. But a lot of people, especially a Cisco environment, there are a lot of places they will buy Cisco. And you need to know Cisco and get a Cisco certification. I get that, and that makes sense. Let's go back to the phones. The 607 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Clive?
Yes, it is you. Thank you for calling. What can we do for you today?
I had a question about the CompTIA Security Plus exam.
Sure.
Now, is the interface normally the same in terms of the actual look and feel of the exam when you go there to take the test? Or do they actually change the interfaces sometimes?
The interface, the basic overall functionality of the exam is the same no matter which CompTIA exam you're taking. They all have a similar look and feel. There is a video on YouTube that actually takes you through what that front end of the exam looks like. So if you've never taken a CompTIA exam, you should watch this video because it will give you a perspective of what it looks like when you're taking the CompTIA exam. I'll turn this volume down for the video, but they take you through, here's what the first part of the exam looks like, here's where all the buttons are, you have to go through the candidate agreement, and then what's nice is they take you through what a multiple choice question looks like, where the navigation arrows are on the screen, flag button is, so you can flag it for review later on. It talks about the question types. They'll show you the multiple choice questions, the fill in the blanks, the matching. They're all on here. The exam type questions that you would expect to have, they will show you in this video. And if you've never taken the CompTIA exams before, this is an important thing to know because you're walking into the exam just blind. You have no idea what you're about to face. And I think if you watch this video, which is from CompTIA, it's called Taking a CompTIA Exam from the CompTIA YouTube channel. It really steps you through everything you need to know. That is the front end. And if you've taken one, then you've got the front end for all the other exams as well. In fact, it looks very similar to the Cisco exams. It looks very similar to the Palo Alto Network exams. They all kind of follow the same format, the same front end. There's not much differences between them. Same kind of idea. So if you watch that video, I think you'll be in pretty good shape.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling. There's a lot to the exam. And you should make sure that you have really gone through and understood what you're about to walk into. I often tell people that it's useful if you are going to an exam location for the first time, go walk in the door before you book the exam. See if they'll let you even stick your head in or look through the window of the exam room so you know what the environment looks like. Or there might even be a picture on their website, because usually this is a training facility and they'll take pictures and put it on their website. And you see what the room looks like. I think it's good to know what you're walking into, because I've walked into some really bad exam rooms. So having the ability to look and take a peek, oh, okay, that's a pretty good exam room right there. I can take a test in there, becomes pretty important. Plus, you know where the facility is. There's no rushing around the day of trying to find it. Where is it? I can't find the address. You never want to be in that situation. It's a level of stress that you do not want when you're working through this exams. There's quite a bit to the exam that has nothing to do with the content on the exam, isn't there? And that's a really good example of something that you might want to consider doing, is become familiar with the exam front end. Then it becomes normal when you walk in. It's not something you're going to have to worry about when that's there. There's not a lot of great resources out there to practice performance-based questions, unfortunately. I think getting as much hands-on as possible is going to help you. So on security, things like we did on our first question, you need to configure an access point. Here you go. Have you ever configured a firewall? You might want to consider doing that, whether it's the personal firewall inside of Windows. If you become comfortable using the personal firewall in Windows, that's something that can help you. You're adding port numbers, you're putting combinations of things together. If you have one that is, a real firewall you can work on, that's all the better. There's a number of firewall front ends that are on virtual machines that you can download, and then you can pull up this front end for an open source firewall and configure it to allow and disallow different technologies. I think that's very useful to have that there. Get as much hands-on as you can. And with security, I understand it's a little bit more of a challenge. Being able to set up an IPsec tunnel is difficult. Configuring IPsec tunnels is difficult for security professionals. I can't tell you how many times I had to call support because I was connecting to some odd device on the other side via IPsec. I could configure my side because I was comfortable with my firewall. I had no idea how the other firewall worked. So we had to figure out, how are the settings on that firewall? How can I configure my settings on my side? It's a challenge. So that's hard enough. Now imagine having to learn that for a certification. If you have the live labs, those are useful because they've already got things set up and they step you through the process. But doing it on your own, you're going to need to hunt around the internet and find those things that you can use to get more hands-on. Becomes useful. Get an IPS, go work with an IPS, watch a video on somebody configuring an IPS. A lot of videos out there that can really help you learning more than just what the exam objectives say. If you've never worked with these technologies before, just watching an overview video may not be enough. You may want to get some extra detail, and that might be a good way to do it, I think. There's a lot on the Security Plus exam. It is an extensive exam. I don't think people understand the scope of Security Plus until they're in it. I go to Reddit, I read the posts, and people say, Security Plus is easy. You don't even have to study. Just go walk in and take the exam. And I know that person has never passed a Security Plus exam. They've never taken this exam before. Whenever somebody says, nah, that's no good, there's nothing good on that exam, that's someone who's never taken the exam. They've never looked at the exam objectives. It's a pretty tough exam. There's a lot on it. And you need to know all of those little details to be able to make that happen. So you should do that. Get as much hands-on as possible. There's a lot of ways to do that. We should start making a list. Here's where you get hands-on with a firewall. Here's where you get hands-on with an IPS. Here's where you can get hands-on with a URL filter, with a WAF, with something doing DLP, with a. We could go down that list and make some sites that have all of those and being able to use them. And you've got a lot of equipment probably at home. Your home router has an access point in it. The screenshot we did today was from my home access points, from my Netgear. But the commands and functions, the configuration settings on that access point, very similar to the configuration settings you would find on an enterprise access point. It's the same concept, the same ideas, the same type of thought process that goes into configuring an enterprise device as it does the one we have at home. Yeah, so I just popped mine open. I went to the screen, did a screenshot. I photoshopped out all of my security settings, And so we got a blank screen. Fill it in. Here's what you need to do. Go fill that in. I mean, that's a normal thing you'd get on any job. Hey, you got a new access point. Go configure the access point. Okay. And just having that little tidbit, that's a little thing you might be able to do on your exam. You might be asked about access points. You might be asked about an IPS. You might be asked about a firewall, and have that there. Becomes useful to know those things, I think, and have them there. Gosh, I hate those. Somebody in the chat room is talking about just really stupid interview questions. I don't mean stupid interview questions like that was a dumb question. Like, it's an actual stupid question. What would you do if a penguin walks through the door right now wearing a sombrero? Well, you would go to another interview, is what you would do. That's what I would do. Let's go to the 937 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Oh, hi. My name's Garrett.
Hey, Garrett. Thanks for calling.
I was just curious. Have you heard anything about the new CompTIA Cybersecurity Analyst certification? You think that one will be big? Because I just been getting emails about this. I got another one this morning from CompTIA and GGS Learning, both.
The CSA Plus. I have noticed that this is the Cybersecurity Analyst Plus certification, CompTIA's latest foray into security certifications. As I mentioned, it's a tough market, and CompTIA says we're going in. We're gonna go into this tough market. Obviously, they already have Security Plus. They already have the CASP exam, the Security Specialist exam. This is one that fits in the middle of those two, the CompTIA CSA Plus, and they are marketing it like it's nobody's business. They're asking. The exam's not even available yet. You won't even know what the exam objectives are until sometime, hopefully between now and February 15th when it goes live. There is a lot on this exam, I'm sure. I saw the beta exam. I haven't seen any employers say that yet. And that is the real secret for a security for any certification, is the employers have to want somebody to have that certification. Otherwise, why would you go get that certification? So there's a chicken egg thing that has to take place first. CompTIA has to get that done at a very, very full, very busy, very full security, very, very competitive security certification environment. There's quite a bit that you have to be able to do to get a certification to go in there. But it is one that I think has potential. But like many other certification exams in security, just having potential doesn't necessarily mean any type of success. So I'm going to be watching and see. I have no plans currently to create any content for the CSA Plus, because the people that I've asked, who've asked me about it, I've asked them, oh, well, CompTIA has they've got a pretty well-established partnership system within their ranks. So they have other people that are CompTIA books for this. They're already creating content for it, and more power to them. I hope there's somebody there to buy their content. But from my perspective, I want to be able to create first content that people are going to need. There's no reason for me to make a bunch of videos, then nobody watches them because nobody takes the exam. And I also want to be sure that the content I create is the highest quality possible. I certainly know the security market, so I'd love to do a security certification, but I'm not going to do it if nobody's going to watch the videos.
Right, looks interesting, but I was interested in Storage Plus, but they retired that, and that was kind of the bridge between Security Plus and CASP certifications.
Yeah, it kind of was, yeah.
That a year or two ago. Yes, but I don't think it was like really in demand with employers, because that kind of bridges off what you learn in A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. It just focuses more on storage, like hard drives and things like that, online hard drives, things of that nature.
My approach with these certifications is a little different than the traditional publishers out there. The publishers that are out there, and the big ones, are creating content, and they're they're of course creating a business plan that says, we think we're going to sell this many units. We get this much money per unit. Therefore, here's our break even. It's a numbers game for them, and they want to be able to have that there. I approach it a little bit differently. I feel like my ear is to the ground a little more than those organizations are. I like to be active on the online communities. I like to ask people what they're thinking. I hear a lot of people asking me about these, and I can have a conversation with them. So I feel like I've got a pretty good idea of where the popularity of certain exams might be. I'd love to be wrong about some of these, and if I am, I adjust all the time about what I think I'm going to be doing. But there's one of these that I think it's important that that ecosystem is in place, and I think it all starts with the employers. I do think the content that is listed on the CSA Plus, it's good things that you should know if you're getting into security. So you should probably learn those things anyway, but ultimately it's the employers that are going to be driving it, because I think most people are going to want the certification so that they can either get a job or get a better job. And ultimately that's what I'm trying to do too, is build content so that people can either get a job or get a better job. That's what we're all trying to do.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yes,
so
and
we'll
I already
see.
have my A Plus, Network Plus, Security Plus. So, yeah, I was looking at this as being possibly another certification for me to get, but we'll see.
It could be. There's a lot of security certifications out there that I think have very good content on them. And I have very specifically in my study group said, don't go get that certification. That's not something you should do. Even though I've said you probably do need to know the content from that certification, but there's no upside for just owning the cert, or there's some negatives to owning the cert. It's a very difficult market to get into. And so everybody's I'm really waiting to see what happens with this. And I think it's the same way with many people.
Yes, same here.
Yep. Well, so we'll see. Call me in a year. We'll figure it out.
Yes, we'll do.
Thanks for calling. There's what certs are bad. People know that I've said very bad things in the past about the hacker, what is certified ethical hacker. Not that the content of the CEH exam is bad, but they've played fast and loose with people's personal information, because they get they ask for a piece of documentation like a copy of your driver's license or a copy of your passport, and then they've not secured it, and copies of people's passports and copies of people's PII have gotten out onto the internet. So I often comically say it's one of the few certifications you can take that helps you understand what to do when your private information is released to the internet. Maybe so. It really is it's a circle. It helps you, and they just help you along. Here's a certification that will train you on PII getting out, and we're just going to let your PII get out. They've had some very bad experiences there. Maybe they're secure now. I don't know, but I'm not giving them my personal information. You can do whatever you'd like. They're not getting my passport. Not a chance on there. So that's one you can come in handy with too, being able to have that there and work through those pieces. Well, it's top of the hour. We've made it through 2 hours of this today. And as you can tell, for those of you who followed this month, my voice actually made it. So I think we've turned a corner. We're finally much better off than we were before. A little bit more difficult to deal with those pieces. It's been a great month. We've started the year off in 2017 with our A+, our Network Plus, and now our Security Plus study group. There's much more to come this year from Messer Studios, working on other projects right now, other things that I think a lot of people will be interested in. I hope to even have a podcast of these events available so that people can download this audio only and do some podcasts. I think that'd be kind of fun too, to have that there. But we'll do another one of these next month. You can always check ProfessorMesser.com/calendar for the latest in whatever event I have going on. And you're always welcome to come back and join us live. Thanks for joining us this time too. And we will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group.